Howdy folks, today another fixed lens compact camera shootout. This time we're doing full frames. I've got the Leica Q2 and the Sony RX1R Mark II. We're gonna do this in reverse. Let's shoot away, then we'll go in studio and talk you through the specs and my thoughts on them. So, looking at them side by side, they are not pocketable thanks to those big lenses, being a 35mm f2 Zeiss sonar lens and a 28mm f1.7 Summilux lens from Leica. They're primo optics, they're not collapsible, unlike the lenses that are in these little APS-Cs. But if you just look at the body, my God, the Sony full frame is hardly any bigger than the Fuji APS-C or the Ricoh for that matter. It's minuscule. Of course, you really need to, before even watching this video, think about, will a 35 f2 work for you? You know, because that's what you're getting, or will a 28-1.7 work for you? If you don't like 28mm or 35mm, then neither of these cameras are really for you. Thanks for checking in. Please like, subscribe, and follow me on Instagram. I'll see you later. For those who these are viable options, then comes the price, and I'm going to dig into this a little bit later, but the Leica is $5,000, and on paper, comparing it to putting together something similar, it's actually kind of a bargain. Don't yell at me yet, I'm going to come back to that. The Sony has been out for 5 years now, so it's been around. It's got a sensor in it that's over 5 years old from the A7R Mark II. It came out at $3,300, and now, thanks to the passage of time and technology, you can pick these up from B&H for just $3,298. They haven't dropped really at all. So they're both super primo cameras, super niche. Let's take them out and shoot with them, and we'll circle back to talk more about the specs and what I think about those prices really. So it's hard to give a real image quality comparison compressed on YouTube, but here's a comparable shot taken first off with the Sony and then with the Leica from similar distance. So you see the Leica is a wider shot, being 20% wider focal length. Now I have to say they're both really sharp. They give a really nice soft out of focus area in the background, and overall the final image is coming up really nicely. If we put them side by side, I haven't done much to these, but you can see there is a difference in the way the two of them process color, and again that's going to come down to your personal preference. But in a straight image quality comparison, I think they're both doing just fine. That said, I'm sure you want to see them for yourself, so go to the link in the description below. You can download a pack of sample files, and you can also check out the current sale that I have on. Now let me circle back to the issue of price. How can I say that the Sony at $3,300 or the Leica at $5,000 are reasonable value? First of all, the Leica, $5,000. What's that closest comparable to? Probably the SL2. They share a sensor, they're both autofocus. The SL2 without a lens is already $1,000 more. Once you add in the closest comparable lens here, probably the 35mm f2, that takes you up to over $11,000. If you were looking at M-mount lenses, which are manual focused, for a 28mm f2, you're looking at $4,900, or for the 1.4, you're looking at $7,300. So the lens alone is costing you more than the whole Q2 full assembly. Similar story with the Sony. If you were to get a used A7 III, for example, from KEH, you're looking at around $2,000. And if you were to then get a brand new, let's say a 35mm f2 Loxia lens, you're looking at about $1,200 on that one. So again, you're coming out to about the same kind of a price. So, you know, as a reviewer, you try to be impartial and to give objective opinions that are going to be helpful for everyone. And when it's products that you are personally interested in, your own personal opinion and preferences can creep in. And in this case, I have quite strong personal opinions on it. Having said that, keep in mind I'm filming now on a Sony. I own a Sony. It's not being anti-Sony, but there are some things that really bothered me about this camera. And to be fair, it is a couple of years older. But let's go through the objective stuff first. So you've seen the images, you can make your own judgment on that. I think they're both making beautiful images. That's not a big thing to separate it out. The newer sensor in the Q2 is arguably doing it some favors. But really the biggest thing that this is going to come down to is 100% up to you, and that's, do you want a 35mm or a 28mm lens? Now the Q2 with the higher resolution does give you a 35mm crop mode that brings it down to 30 megapixels, which is still huge and enough for most people. But of course, keep in mind, a crop mode just takes the central part of your shot. It's not like changing the focal length. So you're going to get a different overall perspective and interplay of elements in your frame on these two different cameras, whether you're using the crop mode or not. In the hand, the ergonomics of the Leica are just, for me anyway, so much nicer. If you really want the absolute smallest you can get, then it's the Sony. It's minute. It's funny how tiny it is. It's smaller than like an X100 and not much bigger than a fixed lens like the ones that I showed you earlier. But that comes with some trade-offs. The design of the viewfinder is really smart, but in practice, it's not nearly as nice to use, I find, as the one that's on the Leica or a normal dedicated, standing there, ready to use electronic viewfinder. Also, having all of the dials so small and crammed in, they're just not as nice to use. A couple of other things with the Sony in terms of design. With no hood shipping with it, of course you can buy one, but being completely flush, every time I went out to shoot with this, I found I had it had pressed against my arm or whatever, and the lens needed to be re-cleaned a lot. Also, the placement of the video button, it's easy to bump with your hand anyway when you're holding it, because as you hold it, your hand will naturally wrap around being so small. But with a strap on it, I found regularly, I must have had a dozen clips where I went to take a photo and found the strap had bumped that button and it started taking a video, so I couldn't take the photo and potentially would have missed the shot. The other thing, and again, I think it's an amazing feat of engineering that Sony got it this small, sincerely, but it does mean the battery is tiny and the battery life sucks. Now, this has been a bane of Sony's full frame cameras. They were using these little FW50 batteries that just had terrible battery performance. Nowadays, in the full frame, like the Alpha series, they're using these much beefier FZ100s. But this guy, running its full frame with dual EVFs and everything, is using this battery, which is the BX1. And it's minute. It's the same battery that they use in their action cameras, for God's sake. It's shockingly bad, and you'd be back in that situation that we used to joke about 3 years ago with Sony Alpha cameras, of needing to carry a pocket full of batteries if you wanted to do any kind of serious shooting. Whereas the battery on the Leica with the double movement that's weather sealed and everything, you can just C, you're going to get a significantly different experience shooting with these. Now getting to the subjective part, I do prefer 28mm. So for me, it's a fairly easy choice. Even if I had to choose the Sony and it was between a 35 and a 28mm option, I would go for the 28. It's just what I prefer. But a couple of times I went out to shoot with both of these cameras. That's why they're both on nice straps, so I would have them both out at the same time. Because the first time I went out, I didn't have them on straps, and I had the second one in a bag. So I'm using one, and then when I wanted to switch, I would just switch. But when I would get to the Leica, I would just keep it out and keep shooting with it, and the Sony was getting no airtime. So putting them both on straps, then went for a day of walking around Manhattan, both of them right there. I could vary my distance to my subject to use either focal length. I still found after half a day of walking around, I hadn't really used the Sony at all. I just so much preferred shooting with the Leica. The overall experience, interface, menus, the tactile feeling of it. I actually had to put the Leica in my bag and then in my backpack, so it was a way to force myself to use the Sony. But out shooting with Yasmin, intentionally shooting each shot with both of them, the Sony does produce really nice results. It is cheaper, and if 35mm works for you, it's still a great sensor despite the years it has on it. I personally would still go for the Leica, but there really is nothing objectively wrong with a Sony other than the abysmal battery life. But you could buy, another 10 of these batteries and still have money to spare compared to the Q2. So let me know your thoughts. This is a niche part of the market already. So, it's not going to be for everyone, but if you've watched this far, I do appreciate it. Please do make sure you like and subscribe. Lots more content coming soon.